Good morning. We're going to talk about Chapter 6, which is about forecasting and pro forma financial statements today. So let me park myself up in the corner so you can see what we're talking about. Hold on, let me adjust my little screen here. I have to remember that my camera's at the top up here. Okay, so forecasting is nothing more than an educated guess about what's going to happen in the future. I know most businesses had no clue what was going to happen in 2020. So we'll talk about that. Pro forma financial statements. Pro forma means that they are an estimate only of things that are going to happen in the future. Remember, our financial statements, our income statement, our balance sheet. So a pro forma one is an educated guess. When you start a new business, you actually need to have pro forma financial statements. So these are financial statements for things that actually haven't happened yet. Okay, so let's talk about forecasting. I'm not going to go over a lot of definitions. I will read them. We'll talk about them a little bit. But when you forecast, it's a quantifiable estimate of future demand. Quantifiable means quantity. How much do you expect to sell or make in the future? Okay, so you can forecast for business. When you do business, you're talking about products and services. But when you're forecasting for a financial, it's all about what are the future interest rates. So the key is, what are you forecasting for? That's the important part. So there is a 6-step process to forecasting, and here are the 6 steps. Determine the type of model to be used, and we're going to go over all of those models. Determine the forecast horizon, and we'll talk about that. I have a screen for each one of these. Select one or more of the models. Yes, you can use more than one to do. Evaluate the model. So basically, evaluate says, hey, I like this, this, and this. And whichever one you choose, or whichever few that you choose, you're going to apply them. Finally, in any processing, you have to monitor and control. This is also called benchmarking for future reference, okay? So let's start looking at the breakdown of each one of these steps. The first one we're going to talk about is, which model should I use? Determine the type I actually need. Well, the real big thing about forecasting is, who's going to need to see this information? Who are you forecasting for, and what information do they require? Because you want to make sure that you put the accurate information, or the information they're looking for, on the forecast. Now, most people, when we forecast, we look at what we call historical data. How do I know what I'm going to need in the future? I look back at the history. Okay, so historical data, is it relevant? Does it matter? Well, if I'm a brand new company, there is no historical data. And by the way, can I get my hands on it? Is it available? Now, number 3 might sound kind of funny. How accurate does it have to be? Remember, it is the best guess. But if you're in any sort of business environment, your whole plan, your whole business environment is tied to the accuracy of that forecast. So you want it to be as accurate as possible, and not just what I call WAG, wild ass guess. Okay? So you want to be as good as possible. How long do I need to forecast for? We'll talk about that a little bit longer. How much time do I have to put this together? Listen, if you only have 5 days to put a forecast together, as compared to 30 days, it's not going to be as good as if you had the 30 days. So these are how you're going to determine which one I actually want to use. Next, we're going to talk about that forecast horizon. Okay? So there's a relationship between the accuracy of my forecast and the timeline. For example, that means that the longer I forecast out, the more likely it is I'm going to be wrong. When I forecast for short periods of time, I'm more likely going to be accurate. So you need to figure out your time horizon. How long are you going to forecast out? It should be at least as long as the strategic plan. Often a strategic plan is 5 years. People do not like to forecast out for 5 years on a forecast, because there's just too many variables could happen. Also, the other key thing here is, what is your product or service? So if it's If I have something that's technological, then I want to do a short forecast because technology is constantly changing. So what's good in 3 months may not be good in 3 years. Okay? Some things don't change no matter what. Milk is milk is milk. Always will stay the same. Okay, so now that we've looked at the first two processes, we're going to decide how to select one or more. And yes, there's always a method to selecting. So we're going to talk about these 6 questions that you're going to ask. Who's going to be using it and what information do they need? Because that makes a big difference. Historical data, is it relevant? How accurate does it have to be? What's my timeline? How much time do I have? And what's the benefit of this forecast to the company? If the benefit is 100% or more, you want it to be as accurate as possible. We talked about that. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for this video. The next video will start up. We're going to evaluate the models and look at each of them. I'm going to make my videos, I try to keep them 5 or 6 minutes so that you're not bored with them, long enough that you'll listen, hopefully. So this is the end of this video.